All right, so now we are officially live. Hey everyone, it's Steven from Tostemac, and welcome to another special guest live stream. And today we are joined by Mr. Thomas Wilson. How's it going?
It's going very well. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Just enjoying a nice day off after like working 6 days straight at work. But hey, that's retail for you, right? So anyway,
Absolutely.
Um, so before we get too deep into the questions today, for those who don't know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am Thomas R. Wilson. I am a storyteller, advocate, sensory-friendly event specialist, business owner. My goodness, the list can go on, and I'm not going to take 4 hours of everybody's time.
Hey, having a
But
long
my
list is a good thing.
absolutely. Um, but the core of my work, I am a live subject matter expert who works really hard to bring compassionate, sensory friendly, and strength based focused events to the community. I have partnered with over 55 businesses, so it's going pretty well.
Wow.
I've also been highlighted internationally, done talks all across Colorado, all kinds of good stuff. I'm not gonna get too braggy. Um, but my mission really is to think about all those kiddos and all those people out there struggling who are being shamed, being talked down to, and try to be the antithesis of that and really build communities where people thrive.
That's awesome. So it definitely sounds like you've accomplished a lot in your career, and it's really cool what you're doing to help individuals out. Because, like, you know, even a little bit of confidence can go like a really long way. Um, so So the next thing is you mentioned about creative efficacy and storytelling. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? Is that like an organization you made, or is that like someone you joined, or
Yeah, definitely. So I created RNH, Creative Advocacy and Storytelling LLC, in late 2021. But I'll go back even further. So I have been somebody who has always been drawn to stories and storytelling. My earliest memories are of my parents reading to me, and um I'll skip a couple things because they're a little braggy, but when I was a kiddo struggling in the school system, people used to tell me I was a monster, I was a problem, all
oh
kinds of
really?
horrendous things. Oh yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate. It happens to a lot of us.
Yeah, that's like
Um,
really extreme. Like, saying like monster, that's like super harsh.
and I could go into far more, but I do not want to trigger your audience, so
Okay,
I'm gonna leave it there.
all right.
But I will say stories were my connection. They were like my safe space. And I have grown up loving like the Odyssey, Edgar Allan Poe, all kinds of like great classics. And so when I grew up, I actually graduated high school, something people said I never would, and I was told that when I was in middle school and elementary school.
Must have been
Um,
satisfying when you got to prove them wrong, though.
oh, incredibly. I actually, so part of my thriving in life right now is very much it is somewhat petty, but I feel like a lot of people can appreciate this. It's kind of me being like, you said I did this, now watch me kind of mentality.
It's
And
kind of
so
like
when I
a similar mentality to what Armani Williams had when people told him that he'd never be able to be like a NASCAR driver, and his mentality is like, just tell me I can't do something and I'll prove you wrong. And it's like, it's not like, I wouldn't necessarily say petty, but it's like but rather, when you're able to accomplish something that people say you couldn't do, I think you've earned the right to like brag a little and have those bragging rights and whatnot.
will appreciate that. And speaking of that, it was in after spending about 10 years in healthcare, I was at a point in my life, and I feel like a lot of people can appreciate this. Um, I always tell myself, I always tell people, it's a daily practice to be your best, not just for others, but yourself when you have neurodiversity and mental health stuff. And I was not taking care of myself as much as I should have. And I remember a day I was lying down on the couch, and I had been struggling for like 6 months. And the one thing that I asked myself was, what's going to get me off this couch and get me moving in a positive direction again? And the first thought was I was going to become a storyteller. And I remember getting me off the couch. Um, and I opened my business in 2021. I knew at the start, like right at the end of 2021, but I knew at the start I wanted to be the opposite of what I grew up around. And so in 2026, like mid 2026, I had my first gig. And it's, if you know business, you know that it's not like an instantaneous thing that happens. There can be
Oh
a lot
no,
of
not in the
growth.
slightest.
Oh yeah, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work, but like realistically within 5 years, I've partnered with 55 businesses. I've been highlighted internationally. I've worked with thousands of kiddos, done talks internationally, all kinds of stuff. And I think really the heart of it is not me. It's not my drive completely. It is the mentality of treating people with a strength-based, person-first mindset and genuine empathy and compassion that has led to my business being as successful as it has been, because people are craving good, kind people, especially in care and especially in a business nowadays.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that because, like, I feel like, it's not just like the retail place I work at, but some areas where it's like, it feels like kindness is has been missing lately in a lot of places. And I feel like, maybe a lot of people might underestimate, the value and, for lack of a better word, power that, kindness can do. How, like, one simple thing can, like, um, change a person's day to like a complete 180. Or maybe, like, inspire them to, like, do something great. And I do have to add that, like, you were talking about, like, person first and focusing on, making people happy, showing them kindness and whatnot, and that you are not the center of it. But I do believe that, you do have like a big part of it because, like you mentioned earlier, that, you didn't like how you were before and you wanted to be different than the people around you. It's like there are lots of people out there that, can would wish for things to be better, or like, oh, I hate how my life is, but like they don't really do anything about it. They just, stay on the couch and just, stay all doom and gloom. But it's like, it's a difference between just wanting something to be better and actually making something better. Like, I've been making a lot of changes in my life, with my diet and exercise because I had some health issues a few years back, and I decided the ER sucks and it's expensive and I never want to go there again. um, so like I had to make some changes there. And for you, you want to help people, you love storytelling, and you said you didn't want to stay on the couch and you want to be better than you know, the people that were surrounding you. So it's like, I feel like you should give yourself a little more credit cuz like, you had a big part in this. Like, as I said, like there are some people that just wish for things to do better and do nothing, but you are doing like so much over the last few years, and I feel like you should be really proud of everything you've been doing.
First of all, thank you for the incredibly kind words. And I will say I am very proud of it, the work that I've been doing. I think for me, and I should probably clarify this, part of the reason I don't always put myself first in this work, or at least like brag about myself, is I have found that one of the great undoings of a lot of people in my field is their egos get a little too big and a little too elevated,
Ah.
and then they forget to put other people first. And that's what I'm practicing there. I definitely take pride in what I do, and I'll be honest, I do daily gratitude exercises
Oh,
so that
okay.
I have the energy to do the work, and I try to honor what I do. It's just for me, the other side of it is that the people I'm working with are also putting in the work, and they're also trying to live a better life and seek support and care and mindfulness. So I like to put them first when I do these interviews because, yes, I am the supporter, I'm the caretaker, but I never want to forget the people who are doing the work first and foremost.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And it kind of reminds me of a quote from Itachi Uchiha from Naruto, and here comes my geek moment, where he says like, "You don't become Hokage and everyone accepts you. Everyone's acceptance is what gets you there. Never forget your friends." And it's like when you were talking about like how people tend to get overconfident or like too wrapped up in their egos, it kind of brought me back to like that moment that Itachi said. And it is very true. Like, when you get too full of yourself or get too wrapped up in your ego, you tend to forget about the people that put you there in the first place. Let's see. Faith in chat says exactly, not just in business, but online as well. That's why I try to be kind to others, even if they trigger me sometimes. I like to say that my heart is sometimes bigger than my head. And that's not, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing. I'd say it's a good thing, having a big heart, I feel like it's something essential to have. So you mentioned about gratitude exercises. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so first of all, I love that comment that was said in the chat. I haven't heard it quite said that way, but I do love the a heart bigger than my head. I could dive and talk about that and how much I love that so long, but I will so the gratitude exercises that I try to do, and I actually find in life one of the easiest ways to become miserable is to lose focus on the good things happening. And I myself, I root actually my storytelling and my events in community connections and other programs that help the neurodiverse and mental health communities because I have my background in healthcare. And there are definitely days where I want to chuck everything out the window and I just want to walk off into the distance and be done with my work. But what I try to do, there's a few key things that I try to do. I try to devote like 5, 10 minutes every day. And sometimes I don't do this. I am not perfect by any stretch of the
Well, I mean,
imagination. I do
nobody's
not have,
perfect.
yeah, absolutely. I don't have this fully fleshed out as I need it sometimes, but I try to create a joy list, which is one thing. So like 3 to 5 things that I'm thankful for in that day. Another one is I try to go through all of the little, medium, and big wins and then like spend 30 seconds of those moments trying to really fully feel and celebrate those moments, even if it's just like 30 seconds thinking about them and being happy about them. Another thing that I try to do, and this is not always the healthiest thing in the world, nor is it the most cost effective thing, but once a week, once or twice a week, um, I try to order in a meal that is specifically for me, no one else. And or I go out into a restaurant and I just try to be with me, enjoy the meal, and kind of just sit there quietly celebrating. I'm working on moving to like healthier food on this because I was doing fried food way too much. But another thing that I try to do, these are all things that took me a long time to get to this point because I was shamed, bullied, mocked so much of my life. And I was also so intensely angry at myself for so much of my life. Um, but the other thing I try to do is I try to reflect on the compliments. I'll be honest, I'm not like prolific on any social media because I feel like the comments are almost always hateful. Well, not all, almost always. Many times they're hateful. And
Yeah,
I
I think
find
a
that's
lot of it has to do
counterintuitive.
with like, where in social media do you look? Because like it can be
Mhm.
helpful, but like, it can also be like, a double-edged sword in a way. Like, there's some social media sites like I think X and Red, if I remember correctly, that I don't even touch because of how bad and toxic they can be. Like I'm fine with just like, sticking with Facebook and Instagram because I know some safe places to go to there. But the others, not so much.
I think that is such an important thing to say. I will say I get a lot of positive comments, but I try to reflect on those positive things and I try to really own them and believe them because what I found, I think this is kind of where a lot of us falter, is if we can believe the good compliments and the good times, that's wonderful. But if they're not established within us enough, uh, when the bad times turn around, that we can't like stay resilient and believe them, then we need to work on that. And that's from my own mentality and my own practice. So I try to reaffirm them, truly own them, and keep them in mind, especially if it's a hard day. And I
Nice.
think there's a big, yeah, it's a huge difference from like laughing it off to truly accepting.
Well, I'm definitely gonna have to work on that myself because, I had some problems where I felt like miserable too, and I feel like maybe those gratitude exercises will help me out. So that was more of a me personal question kind of thing. But yeah, I'll definitely give that a shot. So let's see. The next question is, um, I noticed that somewhere on the site I saw a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons in there. Would you mind going into details about that? Like, do you use Dungeons and Dragons as like part of the services you do?
I do. So I run Dungeons and Dragons, in particular skill-based Dungeons and Dragons. The skill-based side is mostly for teens and younger kiddos, so I do some of it for older individuals. Um, what it is, if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, you might know this, but it is one beautiful game, wonderfully designed, except combat can kind of be a nightmare. Um, but that game has kind of built-in measures to help people develop problem solving, self-advocacy, critical thinking, creative thinking, um, all group decision making. All of these skills are kind of inherently built into it. And so myself as a facilitator, I do a lot of work as well. A lot of beginning players love to start with me because I teach them on an empathetic and strength-based mindset, repeat the rules over and over again as much as people need. But at the same time, what I do is, I try not to be the game master who's trying to control people, more the game master who tries to guide people. And so through all of these skills I mentioned, we roll the dice, we explore as a small peer group how to go through the world, stop the big bad evil guy, drink the strange gray liquid and what happens after that. All the kind of wild D&D
That
stuff.
sounds oddly specific. Strange gray liquid. Man, maybe I need to do a
It's
perception check on that one.
I have so many players who love to, it's very common among game masters to tell jokes about our players who try to ingest things they're not supposed to. Um, but everything is designed through those back and forth, that storytelling, that question and answer kind of element of D&D to help people practice these skills. And not everyone does this. There is also therapeutic D&D. I am not a therapist and I do not run therapeutic. I do more social D&D. But it's a really beautiful game. And if anybody has played, you might be clicking on how actually like, these skills can actually be done. But in that, I've also, my goodness, I've worked with thousands of people at this point and done talks all about this. But it's kind of wonderful because it's this silly little game that also encourages play and role playing.
Sorry, I think you broke up a little bit there.
Oh, absolutely. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I was saying it's the silly little game that encourages role playing and active play. And especially for adults, I think it is socially accepted play. And I think play needs to be reintroduced to adults because it's such a healthy thing psychologically and mentally, physically. Um, but that's kind of it. That's a very quick answer. I'm trying to be mindful of our time, but I hope that explains it.
Oh, it does. It absolutely explains it. And like the stuff about like, critical thinking, problem solving, working with a group, those are a lot of beneficial skills to have and a lot of beneficial skills to like, that you could work on with a group of people. And the one time I played D&D was way back in college. It was a zombie apocalypse, right? And we were trying to get supplies from this abandoned warehouse surrounded by zombies. So it's like we were trying to coordinate, like, okay, who's gonna go where? How are we gonna distract them? Like, there were some times we need to like think outside the box. However, one of my friends, Sean, um, he was actually rather notorious because like he kept trying to find ways to break the game and tried to find ways to create a cure for the zombie virus, even though the game master kept saying, no, there's not supposed to be a cure. So, like, thinking outside the box, me and my friends are quite familiar with that territory. But yeah, it's like, and also reminds me of the time, way back I read in a news article that, another group, I think they were in Australia or something, had used D&D to help autistic individuals, and they would do different scenarios to work on, the skills you were talking about, like critical thinking, working with a group, problem solving, stuff like that. So there is a lot of potential with, D&D. It's just a matter of, getting the people, setting up the time, and, making it happen. And I can't even imagine what it's like for the game master.
It can definitely be a lot, for sure.
Oh God! Now Sean's in the chat. The same Sean I was talking about. He says he should have thought about that before making the cannibal resistant to the zombie virus. Yeah, that's Sean for you. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential. It's just a matter of like making the time and getting the people and making it happen. But yeah, like, Dungeons and Dragons can really help people out that way.
It really can.
Yeah. So the next question is, when we met at Fan Expo, you were talking about neurodiversity representation in media, and I was like really intrigued with some of the stuff that you were talking about. And a big thing was the stark difference between Eastern and Eastern and Western representation of neurodiversity, where it's like in the Eastern media, like animes and some video games, it's shown in a more subtle way. But whereas in the Western representations, like, Forrest Gump and The Good Doctor, it's like spelled out and shoved in your face. So, and I think I remember what you mentioned, but like, why do you think there's such a stark difference between like how the East and West represent neurodiversity?
Yeah, so I mean, I will say I'm not an industry insider, so I can't say for 100% certainty. But what I pay attention to in the articles I've read, I think I have to start with Western media. Actually, no, I'm gonna start with, and I may have mentioned this at Fan Expo, one of my all-time favorite films. And it's not even just because it's an anime, it's just a ridiculously good film. Uh, is The Boy and the Heron.
Oh yeah, I
Such a
remember
good,
that one.
yeah, such a good movie. But the difference between The Boy and the Heron and much of Western media is so much of it is so subtle, and the way they use the imagery and the way they use kind of the discussion around World War II is so much left to interpretation to the audience, and almost none of it is said outright. And I think one that requires a level of trust in the knowledge and the intelligence of an audience. Now, backtracking, and I hate to say this,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I think it wasn't that long ago that there were several people in the movie industry in the United States who made some very upsetting remarks about like animation and how it's still just for kids and it's not a serious medium. I am paraphrasing. I'm sure they probably said it less bluntly, depending on who said it. Um, but American audience, like American writers or American shows and movies, kind of they seem to have less of a respect for the audience, to put it bluntly. So often, like storytelling, like specifically on things like mental health and autism and things, it is so often kind of like smacking people across the head with it. But I think there's kind of a philosophy that if you don't do that, people aren't going to get it. And I think that is it's kind of a talking down to, but in the same capacity, I think there is also a really strong trend in Western media where subtlety is not valued as highly, in all honesty. It is, I think it's popping up more so than it's ever been. But the mentality that even I think Western media companies have, that the American audience is subtle, is also part of the reason it is so blunt. Now, another thing I'm going to say about anime, and believe me, it's not always subtle. I have seen some anime that have like, it's almost like they're walking in 3D and hit me over the head with a bat.
Yeah.
But I think the other side of it really is in anime, like from Japan or like other countries, there is potentially more, and then this is going to might be hard for some people to hear. There's potentially more profit in being subtle in anime than there is in Western media. And to defend what I'm saying here, think of like Ross and Rachel from Friends or some of the great like TV shows. I think part of the reason they spell things out is to make money off of those characters. And in the West, especially, and I think this is one of the dangerous sides of things, when it comes to representation, and I'm going to quote the great Taika Waititi to a degree here. He essentially said, if you're going to have representation, have every character be representation. Don't have a token character. And in the West, and I'm kind of reluctant to say this, but I think it is very true. In the West, TV characters, cartoon characters, at the end of the day, they are a vessel for capitalism and they are there to make money off of something. And when something is subtle or something is overt, like Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory, it is explained, it is said, it is overt, and more people are going to catch it, which means more people are either going to discuss it, cling on to it, get angry by it, and at the end of it, more money is going to be made in one way or another.
Yeah, like and I definitely hear you where it's like, where it's like producers are just trying to grab people's attention quick and make money off of it. But like a big problem with that is like even if it does catch some people, it leaves a lot of them with little to nothing to come back to. And that's like, a big problem. That's why I don't watch The Good Doctor anymore, because everything was spelled out to me and there's not really much left to discover. Whereas like if I were to watch other medias like there's like, Lios from Delicious and Dungeon. There is let's see, Mau Mau from Apothecary Diaries, and like some other series too. And there's also uh let's see, Spirited Away from Hayao Miyazaki, and I think also maybe Kiki's Delivery Service, where it's like it's not spelled out to you. It is left for you to come to the answer on your own. Like, notice the patterns, notice the traits and whatnot, and like come to a conclusion of your own rather than everything spelled out and spoon fed to you. And like when you, as you said, like, treat your viewers and audience as intelligent people, they will appreciate that and like come back for more, either like A, to do some deep diving into like characters and different plot devices and whatnot, or um B, like look back at something and be like, wow, how did I miss that? That's so well thought out. So I definitely see where you're getting that, and it is kind of a shame that a lot of Western media, so not all of them, mind you, but a lot of them, like try so quick to like grab people's attention just to make money rather than like telling an actually good story.
Yeah, and I think the other side of it is, and I don't live in Japan, so I can't say this for sure. But part of the problem with Western media, I would also say, is there is still a lot of ableism in Western media,
Oh yeah.
which feels like there's a lot less in anime. Um, and I think unfortunately, and it's kind of, I can't remember who told me this, but it's such a beautiful way to put it. It's blunt but also direct. And I'm going to paraphrase what I heard, which was stereotypes are tropes in Western media. Um, and unfortunately, that seems to be the mindset a lot of creators have. And a lot of shows will rather go to stereotypes instead of going to the heart of autism or neurospiciness or mental health stuff. I probably said this at Fan Expo, but I can't stand most cop shows because most cop shows slap bipolar disorder or depression or even anxiety on their villains, and that's their justification for people doing awful stuff. It's not that they're bad people, it's that they have mental illness. And these shows view that as the excuse to write something truly horrible in representation.
Yeah, and it's like, and it kind of goes back to some of the stuff you're saying, like using like the stereotypes, the tropes, and again, it's just a way to like quickly grab people's attention and make money. But it's like, like the problem with that is it's not really long lasting. It's not going to leave that good of a lasting impression because it's just more of the same. But like when you focus on actually building the story, building the characters into like people rather than just the labels, that is what's going to make it more memorable. Like when you were mentioning the boy and the heron, there was so much subtlety in that, and with the animation and whatnot that made you love it and want to come back for more. And I feel like it's something that Western media could really try to learn from, or really should try to learn from, like other medias or like Eastern media. And again, I don't live in Japan, you don't live in Japan, so we don't know what's going on, but it's like if we could just simply take what we learn, like the subtlety of like from different animes and medias, where it's like you build the story and the characters first rather than just relying on tropes, stigmas, and stereotypes, that will make a more lasting story, and it will make people want to be more curious and want to learn more about, not just the character, but their traits and personalities too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned Boy and the Heron as one of your favorites. Are there any other animes or medias that include some form of neurodiversity that's your particular favorite?
Yeah, so gosh, there I can think of several. I'm gonna be honest, I'm trying to think. Apothecary Diaries is obviously one of the great ones. Um, Delicious in Dungeon. I know people are like, oh, this character has autism. I honestly think every character in that show has autism.
Yeah, like maybe
Um,
showing it in different ways and whatnot.
yeah, it's I mean, a true to form to the Taika Waititi quote, if that is accurate, I mean that is one bold step in that. And I probably mentioned this at Fan Expo, but I do love a lot of shonen, partly because it feels like so many shonen protagonists are autism coded.
Yeah, I think they were
Um,
mentioning, or some of the attendees at the Fan Expo panel, they were mentioning characters like, I think they also mentioned like Naruto, and I think someone mentioned Asta also.
that might have been me.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Asta, I know somebody mentioned SpongeBob, which I mean, obviously SpongeBob has autism.
That's a
It's
funny thing
like,
because, like, SpongeBob is a Western media, and yet it pulls off the subtlety that we were talking about for Eastern media.
um, I will also say, I know the author never confirmed it, but that's kind of the heart of it. So many characters in Dr. Stone feel very autism coded. But I'll be honest, Dr. Stone really feels like the heart of that show is to capture many different societal aspects and diagnoses. I could go into why. I don't think we have time for that. But I will say one more. What's one other one that I feel like a lot of people um um so I will say this is not an anime, um, but I and it is an animation, and I will say it's a very like rated M, or really not M, but like P higher end of PG-13.
Hmm.
I think it's, oh gosh, what's the show called? I think it's Ghost Hotel, or some version of that on
I
Netflix.
think I know
About
which
a
one you're talking about. Let's see. Here we are. Has Been Hotel. Is that it?
no,
Oh, okay.
1 second. Let me see if I can look it up.
Sure.
Um,
And while you're looking it up, one of the viewers had a quick question. What kind of stories um do you like, or are there like any kind of stories you write?
yes, and I found the show. It's Haunted Hotel.
Haunted Hotel.
So
Okay.
it is very adult oriented. So I do not recommend kids watch it. There's a lot of violence in it. But there's a couple characters in the show who feel very autism and like mental health coded. And if you know Dan Harmon, he's kind of famous for putting autism coding and other coding um, throughout his shows. I mean, one of the great characters of all time, Abed from Community. Um, very autistic character, but still one of the best characters to ever put, ever put to film and screen. I will say, to answer that question, stories that I like and I write. So I will say I don't always write. I do have a Patreon where I create TTRPG stuff, and I try to have like an emotional mental component to it. But I will say I have a lot to learn. I try to go off of my own personal experiences and often base a lot of things off me. Um, Partly because I am I only have my perspective. I can't rate something for everybody. But I will say some of the great stories that I like. I love Edgar Allan Poe stuff. One of the original um, fantastic writers who captured like the elements of mental health and neurodiversity at a time where that really wasn't written about. Um, um, Granted, what I will say, a couple other stories that I love to read. I also feel like Where the Sidewalk Ends has a lot of autism coding throughout its poems. In a story, I'm going for like children's stories that I feel are really powerful. I'll try to think of a couple more here in a second,
Hmm.
but I also really love The Giving Tree. I think that The Giving Tree is one of the greatest. stories about over investing in relationships and also giving too much of ourselves to people in its own way. I know people differ on that interpretation. Um, Thinking of another story I love. Gosh, oh, one of the all-time greats. Dimension 20 and Worlds Beyond Number. Those are two podcasts from, well, actual play podcasts from Brennan Lee Mulligan. Fantastic, fantastic storytelling. They tackle mental health, loss, grief, spirituality, all kinds of stuff throughout. They are very adult oriented. There's a lot of swearing, a lot of violence in them, but they are fantastic D&D actual plays.
Nice, nice. All right, well, that's a definitely some great answers and whatnot. Now I do have one last question before we go, and I know you have stuff to get to. So the last question is, if you had a message to give to any of our viewers watching this now or watching it later, what would that message be?
Um, Gosh, there's so much I could say. Um, I'm gonna say this, and this is so much harder to do than I it may sound. I'm going to encourage everybody out there to find something that brings you joy or happiness and just spend time in that. I know there's a lot that is going on in the world, and there is so much terror and fear and worry and stigma and bias and all kinds of nonsense going on throughout the world. But there's nothing so powerful as simply stepping back and embracing and choosing joy for a little bit in time. It can get you through some really hard times. It can get you through some really dark times. And I can tell you from personal testimony, I spent way too much time paying attention to the news, paying attention to all the fear, all the worry. But those little moments that I spend in joy, even if they're just for me or just with me, they get me through some really hard days. And at the end of it as well, they get me through the days that are hard so that I can get to the days that are really, really good. And spending time in that joy also teaches us how to really truly appreciate those really good days.
Nice. That's actually a really good message. Going back to the simple things that bring you joy can really make a big difference. So, and I don't even watch a lot of the mainline news anymore because it's just nothing but bad news no matter where you look, no matter what TV station you go to, or at least the news stations here anyway. It's it's nothing but bad news, and it's I don't really need that negativity in my life. I can look up some good news on some social media whenever it pops up, or like you said, focus on the smaller things that make you feel joyful, that make you happy. And there's a lot of potential and power that really comes from such a simple thing that could turn your day a complete 180.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so we pretty much reached the end at the special guest live stream. I know you have things you need to do, so I'll try not to take too much of your time, but I do want to thank you so much for taking time to really making this special guest live stream really special, because I feel like I gained a few insights from this as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. It was great having you here. And as for our viewers watching this now or watching this later, thank you so much. If you have any more questions, just let me know in the comments section below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And Thomas, again, thank you so much for joining us on a very special guest live stream. And until next time, see you all later.
Bye.